The village of Kutanji was quiet as the sun set, casting orange light over the roofs of mud houses and the green of the forest beyond. It was an ordinary evening when Koda's life changed forever. His sister, Abina, who had been full of life that morning, suddenly collapsed in their small home, her body burning with a fever that no water or cooling cloth could calm. For days, Koda watched as his sister's condition worsened. The local healer, known for her bitter teas and strange herbs, had tried everything she knew, but nothing worked. In desperation, Koda's mother suggested he visit the old healer who lived deep in the forest, far from the village. Some said she had powers that even the spirits feared. Others called her a witch. But Koda had no choice. He traveled alone, the path winding and narrow, leading him to a small hut covered in vines. The old healer was waiting at the doorway, as if she knew he was coming. Her eyes, sharp and alert despite her age, watched him without a hint of surprise. "You're here for your sister," she said before he could speak. Koda nodded, barely able to hold back his fear. "Please, she's dying." The old healer said nothing for a moment, then motioned for him to sit. She rummaged through shelves filled with jars of roots, dried leaves, and stones, finally pulling out a small pouch tied with a leather string. "Take this," she said, handing it to him. "Go to the big baobab tree in the center of the forest tonight. Sprinkle these herbs around the base of the tree under the full moon, and do not leave until the air grows still." Koda hesitated. The baobab was a place of legends, where people said spirits gathered to whisper their secrets. "Will this save her?" "If you do exactly as I say," the healer replied, her gaze intense, "your sister will recover." Koda returned to the village just as darkness fell, clutching the pouch tightly. The moon was already rising, round and bright, casting pale light over the trees. He moved quickly, his footsteps almost silent as he slipped through the shadows of the forest until he reached the towering baobab. Its thick branches spread like fingers, blocking out the stars. He knelt at the base of the tree, heart pounding, and began to sprinkle the herbs in a careful circle, just as the healer had instructed. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of earth and leaves. But as he finished, a cold breeze suddenly swept through the clearing. Koda looked up, feeling a shiver crawl up his spine. He heard it then, a voice, calling his name softly from the darkness. It was neither male nor female, just a whisper that made his blood run cold. Slowly, he turned, and his eyes widened at the sight of a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the clearing. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, and its form shifted like smoke. "Koda," the voice said low and clear, "do you really think you can change what's already been set in motion?" Koda stumbled back, dropping the pouch. The herbs scattered across the ground, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The figure moved closer, and he felt a chill grip his heart. Then the moon vanished behind thick clouds, and darkness swallowed the clearing. He ran, hearing only the echo of a distant scream that might have been his own. By the time he reached the village, his chest was tight, and he was gasping for breath. He burst into the hut, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Mother!" he cried, but stopped short when he saw Abina sitting up, awake, her fever gone. "She's healed," his mother whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You did it?" But Koda felt no relief. The healer's instructions had worked, but he couldn't forget the shadowy figure or its haunting words. Something had gone wrong. He knew it in his bones. The next morning, Koda went to see the healer to tell her what had happened. But when he reached her hut, she was gone. The door hung open, and the inside was empty except for a single twisted root lying in the center of the floor. He picked it up, feeling a strange warmth pulsing through it. As he held it, A voice whispered in his ear, "You should not have come back." Frightened, he left quickly, clutching the root, and returned to the village. Abina was healthy, but she was not the same. She was quieter, staring into space as if she was listening to something far away. She often woke in the middle of the night, whispering words that made no sense. Days turned into weeks, and Koda noticed strange things happening in the village. Cattle went missing, crops began to wither, and the elders whispered of bad omens. Koda felt the eyes of the villagers on him, their distrust growing, as if they sensed he had brought something dark back with him. Determined to understand what was happening, Koda began to search the forest for the healer. He followed rumors and clues, visiting old shrines and abandoned huts, but found nothing. Each night, he returned home more exhausted, and each morning, Abina's condition grew stranger, her eyes losing their warmth, her laughter turning cold. One evening, Koda awoke to find his sister standing by his bed, her face shadowed and her eyes unblinking. She leaned close, her voice hollow. "She's coming back," she said, her breath like ice on his skin. The next day, Koda sought out the village chief, desperate for guidance. But when he mentioned the healer's name, the chief's face turned pale, and he ordered Koda to leave. "Do not speak of her again," he warned, voice shaking. Some secrets should remain buried. Angry and afraid, Koda left the chief's hut, only to be stopped by an old woman outside. Her face was lined with age, and she looked at him with eyes full of pity. "The healer was not who you thought," she said softly. "Her powers come from a place even the spirits fear. If you wish to save your sister, you must dig deeper and find what she's hiding." Koda's fear turned to determination. He would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. Armed with the root he had found in the healer's hut, he began to visit places he had once avoided: dark groves, hidden caves, and ancient stones marked with symbols he did not understand. And then, one night, he found it, a book hidden in the hollow of an old tree, its pages yellowed with age. It was written in a language he barely recognized, but he understood enough. The healer had made a pact long ago, trading something precious for her power. And now the debt was due. Koda's family was caught in the middle, victims of a bargain they had never made. He closed the book, feeling the weight of the truth settle heavily in his chest. It wasn't just about his sister anymore. It was about his whole family, the village, and a curse that had roots deeper than he had imagined. The only way forward was to confront the healer and force her to end what she had started. But the healer, it seemed, had other plans. The next day, a strange woman appeared at the edge of the village, her face hidden under a dark hood. She did not speak, but the villagers watched as she walked slowly toward Koda's home, her footsteps silent on the dirt road. The air grew colder with each step she took, and the whispers of spirits seemed to follow her. Koda stood in the doorway, gripping the root tightly, feeling its warmth burn against his palm. He knew, whatever was coming, the fight had just begun. The woman in the dark hood moved with a slow, deliberate grace, stopping only when she stood a few steps away from Koda's home. Her face remained hidden, but he could feel the power radiating from her, cold and relentless. His mother appeared behind him, eyes wide with fear, as she clutched Abina, who was shivering, but strangely calm. Koda stepped forward, feeling the root grow hotter in his hand. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the terror gripping his heart. The woman slowly lifted her head, and Koda's breath caught in his throat. It was the healer, but she looked different. Her eyes were dull, as if all life had drained from them, and her skin was pale, stretched tight over sharp bones. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, only a raspy sigh. Koda felt the weight of her gaze, heavy and judgmental. "You took something that was not yours to take," she finally said, her voice cold and lifeless. The bargain was broken, and now there is a price. Koda tightened his grip on the root. You lied to me. You said the herbs would heal my sister. They did, the healer replied, her expression unchanging. But healing does not come without consequence. The spirits are angry, Koda. They were cheated, and now they demand balance. Take me, he shouted. Leave my family out of this. The healer's lips curled into a bitter smile. It is not me you must bargain with. It is the spirits you have disturbed. But I can guide you, if you have the courage to follow me. Koda hesitated, but Abina's hollow gaze made his choice clear. He nodded, and the healer turned, leading him silently toward the depths of the forest. The path twisted and turned, growing darker with each step, the trees closing in like the bars of a cage. Koda felt the root pulse in his hand, burning hotter with every move he made. He didn't dare look back, knowing he would lose his nerve if he saw his mother's tear-streaked face or Abina's distant stare. They walked for what felt like hours until they reached a clearing Koda had never seen before. At its center stood an ancient altar, covered in moss and carved with symbols that seemed to writhe under the moonlight. The healer stopped and turned to face him, her eyes empty and dark. Place the root on the altar, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, and call out to the spirits. Koda's hand shook as he set the root on the cold stone. He hesitated, but the healer's expression did not change. Closing his eyes, he took a deep breath and spoke into the darkness. Spirits of the forest, I am here. I am the one who broke the bargain. Show yourselves. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air grew still, and the trees seemed to hold their breath. Shadows moved at the edge of the clearing, and Koda felt the temperature drop until his breath puffed white in the cold. The shadows gathered, forming figures that circled the altar, their eyes burning like coals in the night. A voice rose above the whispers, deep and hollow. Why have you come, child of broken promises? I want to make it right, Koda said, his voice shaking but firm. I will do whatever it takes to save my sister and end this curse. The spirits laughed, a sound like rustling leaves and distant thunder. There is a price, the voice said. Always a price. Blood was taken, and blood must be given. Are you willing to sacrifice what you hold dear? Koda hesitated, his mind racing. What did the spirits mean? What would they demand? The healer's cold gaze gave him no answers, only silent judgment. He knew he had no choice. Yes, he said, barely recognizing his own voice. I will pay the price. A sudden wind whipped through the clearing, and the shadows lunged forward, surrounding him in darkness. Koda cried out, as he felt a searing pain shoot through his chest, the root on the altar bursting into flame. He fell to his knees, feeling the weight of the spirits pressing down on him. The pain grew worse, and he saw flashes of his family, their faces blurred by shadow and tears. He heard his mother's voice, felt Abina's small hand in his own. And then everything went black. When he awoke, the clearing was empty. The altar was gone, the shadows vanished. Only the moon hung in the sky, casting pale light over the trees. Koda sat up slowly, feeling the weight in his chest replaced by a dull, throbbing ache. He touched his heart and felt something hard under his skin. A scar, shaped like the root he had left behind. He stumbled to his feet and made his way back to the village, his legs weak and his mind heavy with fear. He didn't know what the spirits had taken from him, only that he had given them something. As he reached the edge of the village, he saw the first signs of dawn creeping over the horizon. His mother was waiting for him, standing alone in the doorway. She said nothing as he approached, only opened her arms, and Koda fell into her embrace, feeling the weight of the forest still clinging to him. But Abina was gone. Days passed, and the village seemed to return to normal. The crops grew again, the animals returned, and the whispers of bad omens faded. But Koda knew something had changed. He felt it in the way the air seemed lighter, the way the forest no longer watched him with cold eyes. The healer had disappeared without a trace, and the villagers spoke of her no more, as if she had never existed. One night, Koda stood at the edge of the village, staring into the dark line of the trees. He heard a faint laugh, a child's giggle, carried on the wind. He turned, but there was nothing there, only the rustling of leaves. The scar on his chest pulsed once, a faint glow under his skin, and he felt a deep sadness settle over him. Abina's face flashed in his mind, clear and bright as if she was standing beside him. He reached out, but his fingers touched only empty air. The spirits had kept their promise, and Koda knew that some debts could never truly be paid. I hope you enjoyed the story. If so, please like the video. Let us know your views in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more enchanting tales, just like this one.